Thanks, guys, for having us here. It's good to be with you all today. I know it's a Sunday afternoon, and alcohol regulation may not be the most fun topic to talk about, but it's an important one, especially if you sell and serve alcohol in the state. And if that's done right, I think we can all have fun and have a good time, and everybody can do well in their business. So we're here to talk a little bit about that and hopefully make things a bit more easy in how you comply and get information and make the agency more accessible to you. Talk about our resources so that it's not as complicated of a thing. We realize, I believe, TABC is one of several different regulatory entities and codes that you guys have to work with in order to have a successful business. So we realize that, and we're trying to minimize the type of interaction you have to have with us to get on your way. So without further ado, we'll start just a little bit about the agency. TABC, we are charged with enforcing the Alcoholic Beverage Code, which are the laws, alcohol laws adopted by the legislature. And so sometimes that requires us to adopt various rules that and further interpret the law so that you get a better explanation of how the law works and how we enforce it and how it works for your business. And let's see if this works. Yeah. So we have a process on how we adopt these rules, and we hope you engage with us on them. We start with stakeholder meetings. We have several commission meetings so that folks in the business community have a chance to have a say in how the rules get formed, because they do have an impact on your business. And we know, folks, if you're busy running your restaurant, you don't always have time to keep up with that. So I assume most of you here are members of the Texas Restaurant Association, and lucky for you, because they've been a great partner with us in going over, participating in us when we're proposing different rules and giving us feedback. So we're running an agency, we're not running businesses. So it's helpful to get insight, because we're not always thinking of every element and how something might affect a restaurant or a bar or another type of business. We try to, but so it's helpful to get that kind of feedback so we can make changes so that we develop a regulatory system that works for everyone and doesn't unnecessarily impede what you do. But going back, so TABC is charged with pretty much regulating every part of the industry, from production, sales, advertising, how you have to collect certain information and report it to the agency. And so we try to do that in the easiest way possible. We have about a little over 600 employees across the state to regulate an industry that's, I believe, this number is outdated, but we have about 58,000 licensed locations in the state, and that number is continuing to grow, as you'll see on some slides here later. But our mission is it's predominantly regulatory, but we also have a very important public safety mission where we have to ensure that businesses aren't being used to conduct criminal activity. And that's not most businesses. About 5% of the industry are the bad operators that we've got to focus on. So most of the time, you probably won't see folks like David Doggett and his team, hopefully, but we've always got to come in and check, so you never know. But if you're doing the right thing, then you don't have to interact with them too much. And they're not that scary. All right, so the three-tier system. I think you're all in business, you understand what this is, but the reason I'm bringing it up today is it's always helpful to remember the framework of the laws that are set up that TABC has to enforce, because they're unlike any other, it's unlike how we regulate any other kind of consumer good in the state, alcohol. So sometimes the laws and the rules aren't so common sense, they're hard to follow, but if you kind of keep in mind what the law is trying to do and how it's set up and what we have to enforce, you can kind of get the feel for where something's going to go. If you have a different idea in your business and something you want to do, you may not know every law and rule on the book on it, but this is kind of a helpful starting point, and we're glad to work with you to figure things out. But in some, if you're a business in one tier of the industry, you basically can't operate a business in a different tier of the industry or have control or have a financial benefit or a financial tie. And I think the way that impacts your businesses quite often is when you're looking to advertise your business different ways, your products, doing different promotions. If you're want to do a deal with a member of another tier, there are certain exceptions that allow you to do that in I think a limited way. And I'm definitely not the expert on that, but Thomas can hit on that more in a bit. So if you have any questions on advertising, promotion, pepper Thomas with them, because this is your chance. He's like one of the most knowledgeable people on that. So I think you already know what we do. We license and permit businesses. We try to do that as quickly as possible, and those response times are improving. We have to register with approved products. So as folks in the production tier come up with new products that consumers want that you eventually want to sell, they've got to go through us first before they get to market, and Thomas's team works a lot on that, but not something you have to deal with directly. We also collect taxes, which, not sales taxes, so if you have sales tax questions, that's more of a comptroller issue. We probably won't be able to answer them, but if you have those kind of issues, I know Kelsey Stroyfert with the association has a lot of great contacts with the comptroller's office, can help you on the sales tax stuff. But we do collect excise taxes on the first sale of alcohol, so that's more at the production and middle tier, the wholesalers, distributors, and we also collect taxes when alcohol is being imported into the state, along with cigarette taxes on importations. And then we have our audit division, so we have several compliance officers that regularly are available to conduct inspections around the state of businesses and analyze reports to make sure your businesses are following the law and are continuing to be eligible to operate your businesses, and ensuring that we have an even, fair playing field. So our approach is trying to enforce the law in a fair and predictable way, and we do that by our new heavy focus on education and how you can comply. Because if we're just coming at businesses from a fine penalty stance without first trying to educate folks on how to comply, we're not really doing anybody any good. So that's our goal, and the punitive part is a very last resort, and that's something that a small percentage of businesses get into. So that's our goal, and we want you to know TABC is a collaborative partner with you. If you have some kind of new, innovative idea, the laws don't always specifically keep up with that or specifically address some of the things you want to do with your business. That doesn't mean you can't do it. Sometimes it does mean you can't do it. We can't just say yes on everything, but we want to find a way that we can make the law work for you. So if you have some kind of idea, please let us know. I mean, Carrie Burton's here. We see her on the screen. A few years ago, she began using this self-serve machine for wine. So you can get a card at the restaurant and go and pick out the wine you want as a consumer and put your card there and get it. It's a fun deal for a consumer. I went and tried it. It was great. I love it. But our folks at the agency initially told her business, like, she can't do that. She's already made the investment. And so we went back to our attorneys, and they're like, well, they're saying this is an illegal vending machine. And we kind of looked into, well, how does this actually operate? You're not putting money in a machine directly and getting booze out and you're on your way and there's no checkpoints. No, Carrie's done this in a very safe way. She kind of created the model for it. You have to interact with a server to get your prepaid card. They're checking to make sure you're of age, that you are not intoxicated. And then there's somebody that can see you go up and go up to the wine self-service machines and pick out your wine and make sure you're the right person to be up there and that you're not stumbling around intoxicated on all the wine you've already consumed. So we went back, did a whole write-up, and now we see several businesses around the state that are using the same model. There's like a winery that has this kind of deal like in downtown Austin. I saw an article about a brewery that's using this at their place in Houston. So that's one of many examples how over the past few years TABC has been taking innovative ideas and figuring out how we can make it work within the law. So don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing we can do is say no and talk to your association about lobbying the legislature to get that approved in laws. We can't get too cute with the law. We're the enforcers, but what we can make work, we'll do. So our public safety function, I kind of covered that a bit earlier. We have to ensure that no one is using their business in a way that's going to endanger the community. And we have a force of about 200 police officers, is that right? So statewide jurisdiction, they are fully licensed police officers in the state, but the focus is on the Alcoholic Beverage Code. And we ensure violations aren't occurring on licensed premises or by the license and permit holders. And the benefit of having cops, I know people ask a lot, well, why does TABC even have cops? It's a regulatory entity. We are. But the benefit is our folks can go in at any time and conduct investigations, inspect, whereas other law enforcement agencies, they may require a warrant to go in there. So we're able to go in and see when things are happening. And because of that, we're able to, if you're one of those 5% bad actors in the industry, we're able to figure out what's going on pretty quick, hand over the stuff for a criminal investigation to general law enforcement, and then we can work on taking swift action through our administrative authority to suspend that business or fine them or stop whatever that bad action is more quickly than waiting for it to go through the criminal process, which more quickly provides a level of fair playing field, because when you have folks that are abusing the system, they're having an unfair advantage and how they derive income and putting you at a disadvantage as good operators. So that's why we have a police arm at this agency, and we are continuing to improve how we operate, and we hope you've had good experiences when you've had to deal with our cops on limited circumstances. And our deputy chief of law enforcement is here to talk about any public safety issues that you have. So feel free to engage with us. And I have a few more prepared slides, but if we're talking about anything that strikes a chord with you, or if you have a question or idea, feel free to grab the mic and let's talk about it. Definitely want this to be more interactive instead of us just talking at you. None of us are going to make the most of our time if we're just telling you a bunch of things you don't want to hear. So it's a Sunday afternoon, and definitely want to make sure we talk about what's important to you guys, so we can all get something out of it. We can get to the next slide here. Human trafficking, I think I spoke about this a little earlier at a station over in the middle of the exhibit hall, but TABC has seen that Texas as the number 2 state for reported cases of human trafficking, and TABC, because of its law enforcement arm, has a unique ability to go in and see when this stuff is happening sooner than other people would. So, and we've seen that it occurs often where alcohol is sold and served. So we started an initiative about, was it 2017, 2018 on the education?
Yeah, it's been about,
yeah. So we started an initiative to educate the alcohol industry on how to identify and report human trafficking, so that our folks can go and check it out and see if there's any legitimacy to it, or if it's another issue that we still need to take action on. And since then, we've seen a big increase in the number of reports of suspected human trafficking and the number of businesses that we've actually taken action against, because there is something more sinister going on there. And because of that, we also have a nexus in interacting with some of the victims that you come across in this situation. So we have victim service coordinators that connect these folks with services to get help and improve their lives. So we have this education on human trafficking available for any business that wants to request it. It's voluntary. You can go to our website and go to the contact us section. I think there's a form you can fill out. So we're glad to come on demand, either in person or virtually, and have one of our officers do some human trafficking education. David, do you have anything else on human trafficking, or?
Yeah. When this education that we provide.
You gotta talk louder. Your mic's up. There you go.
Yeah.
The education we provide, we started out doing it with wholesalers and distributors, because it's just an extra set of eyes at locations. But you, as operators, y'all know what's going on in the industry, at least right around your area. So those extra eyes that we can put into locations are great for us. So if you ever see anything or hear anything, make sure you contact us, and we can come and provide education to all your employees, like Jared was saying, and it's free of charge. take us about an hour or so. Thank you. It'll take about an hour or so to go through it with you guys and your employees, and it's just an extra layer of protection we can provide to the citizens.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to get into what we're seeing in the industry from the agency perspective, and that is, I think you've all kind of heard about this too, how fast the industry is growing in the state. Over the last 10 years, the industry as a whole, and that's from production to sales to distribution, over the past 10 years has grown by like 24%. And if we're just looking at on-premise retailers, separating that one out, they're also growing. They've also grown by 24% over the past 10 years. I know we had a lot of questions about a year or so ago about how the pandemic is impacting the industry, and we didn't have immediate answers because the permits on our end, they operate in a 2-year cycle, and so we couldn't see that. We're 2 years out now. You can really only see a slight dip in permits with the industry as a whole, and then with the retailers. But I think a lot of that is because, I think when you look at on-premise retailers, we only have a dip of 100 permits, in 2020 to 2021. But I think it's being offset by the new businesses that were opening up there. Because I know the Restaurant Association had some info, I think during the peak of the pandemic, 1,000 businesses in Texas or restaurants were closing a month. Devastating. But as far as total numbers, not a big difference, but I bet those numbers would have been higher had it not been for the pandemic. And also, side note if you're taking a photo of this or anything, the distribution wholesale tier, that number is a bit high. There was something off in our data folks that were getting this together. There's still been growth, but just not that sharp incline you're seeing. So just wanted to point that one out. Also, I had a question at a previous conference and I found the answer. It was, how is the Texas population, the growth there, tracking with the growth in industry? And so what we've seen is, from the 2010 census to the 2020, the population of Texas grew by 16%. So the alcohol industry is definitely keeping up with that, and if not a little more, I believe, with being at 24%. So glad the restaurant industry and bar industry is ready to serve all the new Texans we're getting. So that's good for the economy and good for the consumer that has all these different demands. But how's TABC dealing with this? With all the growth, the agency has not been growing like the industry or the state's population has. So we've had to get a lot more lean, a lot more efficient. And just in the past year, we've taken wait times to get a new license for your business, or if you're opening a new location somewhere, it used to take over a month. Now we're down to less than a month. And we're reforming a lot of processes to get more efficient, but I think a big factor in that is last year we launched the TABC Online system, AIMS for short as we call it, that allows you to pretty much do most, if not hopefully we're going to get to all transactions with TABC Online through this. And we know there have been a lot of problems with the initial rollout, a lot of headaches, and we appreciate this industry working through that with us and being patient. Those kind of things happen with initial technology rollouts, but I think we've gotten through a lot of that and we've made a lot of improvements. There's still improvements to make, but please work with the Restaurant Association. I know they've been good at pointing out different things that are negatively impacting businesses or features that aren't there, because we want to build this into ultimately the product that best serves you guys, so that you can do all of your transactions with TABC 24/7, rather than waiting for business hours to go drive something to an office or mail in, by certified mail, a check to the agency. That's just not how anybody does business anymore, any kind of transaction, any other aspect of life that you're dealing with. So TABC is coming into the 21st century. It's just we have some growing pains with it. So if you have any issues on that, glad to talk about AIMS. But yeah, I think those are the points on that. And we have a lot of new features coming to it that I want to point out real quick. If our slide will change. There we go. And so the big one I want to point out is compliance reporting. So I know several years ago, your businesses were subject to having an auditor come on site and do a live inspection. It might have been during your business hours, which is inconvenient. They would go do a walkthrough, make sure you had signs posted, ask you a bunch of questions, take up a lot of your time that you don't have to give. And so we changed that process. A couple years ago, we launched an app where you can do your own inspection yourself each year. And that's worked out pretty well. We had a lot of good feedback from businesses across the state. Talked to the Papa Brothers folks recently, the Landry's folks, and they've appreciated how that's allowed their businesses to, I think, more easily meet this annual inspection, and they can do it themselves on their own time, available for any business. However, we had to cancel the app. We had an issue with our vendor, so we're building all of that right now into Ames, and that's hopefully going to launch. It may be late fall, but it's more likely going to be in the spring, but whenever that's coming online, we're going to put out all the information. I hope you're signed up for our emails. And if you're not signed up for our emails, I hope you're signed up for the Restaurant Association's emails, because they also pay attention to our stuff and they help notify you when these things are coming on board. So please stay tuned for that. Another one I'll point out for improvement to Ames is if you have the misfortune of having some kind of violation, or you get a warning, we're going to, I think by spring 2023 is the last thing I was told, launch the enforcement piece of our Ames online TABC system, where you can see your violation history, and if you have, hopefully you don't, but if you have a fine that you need to pay, you can do that also through Ames instead of waiting and submitting mailing in a certified check and going through that. I know some businesses, there's a long approval process to get those done, and it may take after the deadline we give folks to submit those sometimes, which I heard about recently. So we're fixing that. But the last thing on Ames, unless there are questions, is I don't have to skip to this slide if it's not going to work. But so today, everybody is eligible to get into this online system. We had a gradual rollout. That's definitely not the slide we're going to talk about. We had a gradual rollout of folks getting on month by month by month. Now everybody's eligible to get on. So far, 60% of licensed businesses across the state, or I think more than just the state, we have our out-of-state production folks that have licenses with us as well. 60% of the entities we license are on Ames. So if you're one of the 40% that's not using Ames yet, I encourage you to get on. It's a lot easier today to use it than it was a few months ago, and it's going to continue to get better. And we're pushing more and more features to it, as you can see. And compliance reporting is going to be one I think you want to use, so you can do this on your phone and not have to have an agent come by and do this and take up your time when you don't have that kind of time to give. So if you have any questions or need info on Ames, you can go to tabc.texas.gov/Ames. There we go. It's working now. And you can get all the resources for it. We have video guides, documents you can read through and how to use it, and then there's contact info to contact a real live person at TABC if you're having trouble figuring that out. But please let us know if there are features that you need in this so that we can try to work that into our plan and make this better and make it something that works for you. It's not going to do anybody any good if we're not putting this together in a way that serves your business. We already talked about compliance reporting. Last thing on prepared remarks is we have a lot of information on our website. If you go to our Industry Guidance Center on our web page, you can access all the information about Ames. We have a lot of marketing practices advisories that Thomas and our legal team have put together that talk about different promotions you can do and various common questions that we've received. And we also have the TABC Talk series. All those videos are online that cover a lot of different issues that pop up in your business that we have common questions about. We have some good videos on how to sell alcohol to go, how to deliver alcohol, one of our favorite things to come out of the pandemic. I've definitely taken advantage of that as a consumer. So I hope that's been working well with your businesses. Glad to talk about that issue too if there's questions on alcohol to go. Oh, we do have a question.
Like compliance provider in that area, but what do you consider the best practices for online ordering and delivery?
What was that? I couldn't hear you.
the best practices for online ordering and delivery for ID verification?
Right. So, well, we have a lot of information on the website and that, and we also have this course called the Texas Responsible Alcohol Delivery Course, TRAD for short, because we love acronyms. So that course kind of goes over all the different ways that you can make sure you're delivering to, so the recipient has to be someone who's 21 or over, and that has to be checked for if they're coming to pick it up or if you're delivering at the door. We have some feedback here. Also, if we have to ensure that the person, if you're at your restaurant, handing it off to a delivery driver to go deliver the beverage to someone, that driver also has to be 21 or over. I know recently I've heard about, there have been a lot of issues with that, I think with some of the third-party platforms doing pickups at certain kind of stores, and we've had to do some reminders at other conventions we've gone to. So that's a big one. I think another one is ensuring that the product is sealed in the appropriate way. We just adopted some language on that clarified what is a tamper-proof container. Let's see, let's skip to this.
Well, I can tell you that we just recently did an operation because we wanted to see how consumer delivery was in compliance with the law. I can tell you we had 7 deliveries and half of them were not in compliance with the law. We had a few that just dropped it off at the door and walked away. And as Jared stated, you need to make sure that the person that ordered the alcohol is the only person you deliver it to. That person is 21 and the person is not intoxicated. And so 50% of the consumer delivery permits that we checked were in violation of that.
Now, David, I think one thing that's important to point out is that the restaurants or whoever was ordered from that use those permits, those customer delivery, what do you call them, or delivery permits, those companies that have those permits in the state, once you hand that alcohol off to them, they're liable for that action. So that's something to keep in mind too versus your own delivery driver. So if you're sending your own people, you're liable. If you're passing it off to somebody that holds a consumer delivery permit, they're liable. And that's what we've been checking, and we are trying to work with those companies to get them on the right page. Yes, ma'am. Ty, come on, I thought you were going to run around for us.
You may get into
we have
this
a
with
question
the
over there
tamper-proof
afterwards.
section,
Okay.
but my question was alcohol to go regarding draft beer. So our location, we already have all the processes for like single pour liquor, for cocktails to go, but as far as like draft, is it just the plastic cup it comes in, a lid, and then the seal over it? What's the best way to do that?
You can do
Depends
that.
on what kind of permit you have.
We have the MB.
Okay. So,
Go ahead.
yeah. So even, I think the only difference really, if it's a cocktail, a spirit, is the limitation on the amount. So for beer, it still has to be in a tamper-proof container if it's coming out of a mixed beverage location. So the sealing requirements aren't any different, and labeling requirements aren't any different on that. Although, if you have the wine and malt beverage retailer's permit, where you just sell beer and wine, you have a bit more flexibility on that. But the laws that were adopted on the mixed beverage permit for alcohol to go, cocktails to go, because previously, booze can't leave a mixed beverage premises, because it is now, they had some more strict, requirements on how it's sealed. Yes, I believe so. So.
No, you don't have to. If you seal it with a zip
Before.
tie or staple,
Those are options.
yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to shrink.
I didn't know you were talking about the numbered 1 through 4. Yeah, no, those are the 4 different ways you have for sealing it. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot of people getting in the food truck business. Can you license a food truck?
We cannot license the food truck itself. We do have people that pull a catering certificate. So if you want to pull a catering certificate, park it at a license or park it somewhere. leave it there and then sell from that location, you could get that catering and do it that way. But it wouldn't be something you can move around from location to location, nor could we give you a permanent license for it
And
without a legal law change of some
And,
kind.
and I'll add to that, or unless you had a follow-up question, the thing I was going to add to that is, TABC, we license locations, not like structures. So, if there happens to be, a food truck, on a licensed location that's, permanently stationed there, if it's within the licensed, if the food truck is permanently stationed within a licensed premises, then alcohol could be sold out of the food truck. But like, we don't license or permit something that we don't have the authority to, that moves around. So if it's permanently stationed at a location, we can license the location, and the truck could permanently sell it from there.
If it's a brick and mortar store and you're parked in front of it, you could sell out of it?
It depends on we would look at the diagram of the location, make sure everything flows together, but the laws changed a few years ago. Your association worked to take into account food sales out of food trucks and apply that to their overall food sales for the business so they could get food and beverage permits. So we actually had some bars and some things like that were taking advantage of having food trucks that they didn't necessarily manage on their premises. So I look at it kind of like that. It would be maybe a similar scenario if the food truck was on your premises. Then we could take a look and maybe make something work.
Okay. So a catering permit, is that just a one-shot deal?
Used to get a catering certificate, the only person that could get it, the only business that could get it was a mixed beverage, and everybody else had to go and pay $200 for a temporary permit each time. When the laws changed during our sunset session, so 2 sessions ago, they applied that catering certificate to everybody. So anybody and everybody that's got an on-premise license can get that permit. It's included in the cost of the permit you pay for every 2 years. It's no additional fee. You just file the paperwork out, you fill it out, send it in to us. It's on our webpage. And there's 2 different ways to do it. You can do a file and use, which we do often for weddings and things like that. But there are some restrictions. And so if it's over 500 people, if there's a sponsorship by Benny Keith or something else, then we're going to look at it a little more tightly, and file and use wouldn't be a legal way to go about it.
Okay. So if I'm in one location one day, I have to get a separate permit for that. I get a permit for that, and if I move to another location the next day, I have to get another permit.
You got it. And you got to keep your home base permitted and keep your alcohol at home base.
And then I have to have a stationary license somewhere.
Yeah, right. You're going to have a brick and mortar somewhere.
Okay.
And then from there, you could pull a catering certificate to different locations. I can tell you that we do have some regulations built into the law that says once you've catered a location more than 10 times, we start looking at it to say, do you need to get a permanent license there? And that could cause a problem for a food truck. So the law is not quite there for a food truck. It's getting there.
Yeah.
And we've seen talking about it and things like that at the legislature over the years, but it's outside of the catering certificate in use a few times. We did see it during the pandemic fairly often. You don't see it otherwise.
I got to give you kudos. I never thought I'd see in my lifetime walking out of a restaurant with a gallon of margarita in my hand. So my hat's off to you on that.
Well, the kudos are to the Restaurant Association
That's
who
right.
fought hard for you guys to get that passed at the Capitol. We helped figure out how it could work, so we're glad to play a helpful role in that, especially making it work, working with you guys and the governor, and then to get it, approved permanently in law. So kudos to you guys for doing it responsibly during the pandemic, which is, I think, the reason why the legislature felt like they could, make it a permanent law. So thanks for being good partners and doing the right thing.
Thank you all for having us today. We very much appreciate it. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to hunt us down. We'll be happy to answer your questions. So thank you very much for having us.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.